Good evening to my friends, enemies, family, and foes. I'm here with the one and only Natty King Ethan, the first guest who I've had on for the second time. And I brought him on because I think health in this country is really, really important. And I want to just continue to talk about some of the ways that America specifically talks about health and how foods impact our lives, and also discuss what you can do to be more healthy and live a healthier lifestyle. So I'm very excited for this conversation. We also both brought our gallons of water. So we're gonna stay hydrated, and I'll let Ethan introduce himself again to those who haven't um, heard from him yet, and we'll jump into some discussion and some awesome conversation.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Ethan Brown, and I'm just happy to be back on the show again. Second podcast ever, but I'm the first one to be re-invited, so take that one pridefully. So I'm just excited to get into this conversation.
Me too. And to those who haven't been invited back, you will be. All right. Just give me some time. I'm also gonna be gone for a month in Greece, hence the Greece shirt. I'll try and record some YouTube shorts over there. But let's jump into it. I want to talk about my latest YouTube short. Um, I know you're I don't know how aware you are of like health when it comes to things that aren't necessarily food related, but I'm sure you are. We haven't talked about a lot of that stuff yet, but I was just talking to Ethan about loneliness and how loneliness, according to Vivek Murthy, I believe his name was, says it's as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which I thought was really fascinating. I wanted to ask you, how do you think loneliness can lead to negative health?
So very interesting topic. Just jumping right into the deep end, you know.
You know it, bro.
So it's very interesting that he compares it to smoking cigarettes because smoking, as we know, it creates like respiratory issues. So there's like a physicality side of it. When we're talking about loneliness, that's more of a mental health side of things, which is an epidemic in itself. I mean, if we look at the suicide rates in America, it's extraordinarily high, and that's
Mhm.
because part of it is loneliness, and the other part of it is just like lack of self confidence, which is a very serious issue that honestly comes from your self intrinsic value. You know, if you feel like you have a good reputation with yourself, you have that self confidence because you
Mhm.
have tons of evidence supporting that you are who you say you are,
Yeah.
and that's empowering. So, as far as the loneliness goes, I believe that more importantly than surrounding yourself with others would be surrounding yourself with actions that move you towards who you want to be.
Yeah.
Because if you're not satisfied with yourself and staying in your own company, you're not going to be satisfied with other people around you. It's
Very
just a
true.
distraction.
Yeah.
Let's see it as it is.
I think it's also important that you surround yourself with people who are inspiring and make you feel like you're part of something bigger. Because oftentimes there are a lot of people who may be suffering from mental health um illness, and if you're around people that are, really mentally ill, that can also like sort of be contagious in a way where you start feeling like you're not able to achieve as much, as opposed to if you surround yourself with people who are, even if you are struggling with mental illness, are like working to achieve um solving that, working to better themselves in that way. I think it's much better for your body and your brain, you know?
Absolutely. I think that there is a saying, you are who you surround yourself with. The sum of the five people you spend the most time with, is who you're going to be. They say, show me your circle, who you hang around with, and I'll tell you who you're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true. If you are hanging around people that are dragging you down, how are you going to rise up to be the best version of you?
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you're on your own, you could maybe become pretty good, but not nearly as good as if you had a team of people that are pushing you further.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's helping to carry you up and lift you up to become who you should be and who you know you want to be, you're gonna make it so much further than trying to make it on your own.
Mhm. I wanted to touch on let me ask you first. Are you like somebody who's very interested in health, are you like familiar with stuff on mental health?
I am, but I'm not
Not an expert.
licensed
Yeah,
in
yeah,
any sort to talk about like treatments or anything like that.
yeah.
I believe that actually I know that your physical health is going to tie into your mental health. Every time you work out, you have a rush of endorphins, you know? So I feel like by neglecting the physical side of things, it's going to make it so much harder to find the mental health that you want without seeking that physical health first. You know, if you have a strong body, it's going to lead into a stronger mind.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you how you think social media might play into people having poor mental health. Because in my opinion, we've seen social media sort of take the world by storm. I remember being in sixth grade when Instagram first came out, and I got it, and instantly I was like hooked. Everybody was hooked because it was just such a this weird thing where you're able to interact with people without even needing to go out, you know? And I got that from being on the PlayStation and being on gaming devices, which I don't think are necessarily detrimental unless you abuse them. Anything can be abused. Um, but if you look now, social media has sort of become embedded into just like the way we live. And you go out to a restaurant, you go out to a store, and there are social media apps, like follow us here, find us here. Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you go on social media, you often see people comparing themselves to others who may look better than them or may look like they're living better lives than them. And it seems like when you're able to compare yourself so much or just see people that are living maybe a life that you want to live, you start looking at your own life as something that isn't as worthy or isn't as good as that.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about social media is look at it as a vehicle. It could be something that can help bring you to where you want to go, or it could bring
Mm-hmm.
you somewhere that you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Same as getting in the car and driving, you know? The problem comes when you start to compare. Comparison is the roots to decreased self intrinsic value. If you are looking at somebody else and you get a sense of gratification that you look better than them, or you feel demoralized because they look better than you, you've already lost. What you need to do is you need to look in the mirror, assess where you are, look at a picture from you a year ago, and see if you've improved. That's the only true way to determine whether you're moving in the right direction. It doesn't matter if I'm bigger than him or her, or I can lift more than them. It doesn't matter. It matters if I'm doing better than me last week. It matters if I managed to wake up earlier than I did last week, or I managed to be more on my nutrition, or I was on top of my water intake. That's what really matters, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once you start comparing to everybody else, it's it's not even a fair comparison. You know,
Yeah.
I've been training since I was 7 years old. If you're going to compare yourself to me, I'm probably going to blow you out of the water. And if I'm going to compare myself to all these people on Instagram, half of them might be on steroids. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know their story. I don't know what they've been through. So why would I start comparing myself to others?
Yeah.
That being said, Instagram or Snapchat or YouTube or any of these platforms, they can also be used to boost you up.
Yeah, I
If
was
you
gonna touch
start
on
using
that.
it as like an educational resource, you can learn so much from those platforms, or you can
Mm-hmm.
find motivation in those. Or instead of looking at somebody and being like, oh, I'm not as big as him, I'm not as strong as him, start looking at it more like, oh, this is somebody who's been consistent. This is what I could achieve if I start to keep myself accountable. This is what somebody who keeps themselves accountable looks like. That's what I want to be.
Yeah.
Not I want to look better than them, but I want to see what has worked.
Mm-hmm.
He has a stack of proof showing that consistency is working to get him where he wants to be. How can I emulate that?
Yeah. And I feel like I've used social media growing up in a way that has been negative, but it also has been really positive. I've learned so much about the world and I've discovered so many good things on social media. So I really think it is what you make of it and resisting the distractions that are out there. Because as somebody who studies sociology, it really seems like you have to actively resist the temptations that the world gives you. Because if you're not, like, if obviously you and I get tempted to go eat junk food sometimes, like it tastes good. That's why we want to
Absolutely.
do it. And you have to actively put effort into not giving into things that are constantly trying to get your attention and get you to like consume maybe things that aren't healthy for you.
Absolutely. And The world is a whole bunch of options, and oftentimes the one that is going to be best for you is not going to be the most appealing,
Or the
because
easiest.
it's not going to be, because you have to learn to like put off that instant gratification from that Taco Bell trip late at night, to know that you're going to get a much greater sense of satisfaction later on, when you know that all those right decisions you made have worked to build who you are today,
Hmm.
and you have the character to show for it,
Yeah.
because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, sure, you could avoid eating unhealthy foods so that you could look better, but if you look great, what's that matter if you don't feel great?
Very true.
So it's really about building the person who you want to be, the person who can say, no, I don't want to do that, because I'm not the person who does that activity. I'm the person who's working and striving towards something bigger.
Hmm. Hmm. I love what he's saying. This is fucking inspiring. Um, so tying that into another topic I wanted to discuss, that was talking about food and resisting some of those things and feeling good about yourself. I want to talk about uh an interesting topic, everybody's favorite topic, capitalism. I think we have a stigma just to talk about it in a good or bad way, just saying the word gets people thrown off.
Capitalism.
Yeah, just keep saying, everybody just say it. But I did want to talk about something serious, and that was something I showed you when you walked in my room, the obesity industrial complex. And I thought you'd have really interesting and valuable insights that I wanted you to share. Um, and so I was watching this video, and they talked about how not only are foods that you may find at the grocery store becoming more sugar oriented and more unhealthy, but they talked about how companies are actually trying to make their foods more competitively unhealthy, because sometimes the more unhealthy a food, the more addicting it might be. Like the more unhealthy the ice cream, the more addicting it might be, just because there's so much sugar in it, and your body might want that sugar and expect that sugar. So I wanted to ask you about, how maybe how are companies, in your view, and you don't need to like be an expert on this, I'm just asking you as somebody who's into health, how are companies how do you see companies advertising their products, and how do you recommend people resist or find other options that aren't as unhealthy and maybe are harder to find, or might be more expensive, but maybe better for them?
So loaded question.
It was a lot. Take your time.
So here's the thing: is that Big Sugar, they know what they're doing. Their product sugar is in so many products, and they realize how addictive it is. They realize that the American populace is hooked on their product.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
why would they, like from a monetary standpoint, decide to take away or to decrease the the products that their people are hooked upon?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. If they have something that the people are hooked on and they want to keep coming back for it, and they can indoctrinate the children into it, why would they change it? It's purely monetary for them. So from that standpoint, it makes sense what they're doing. On top of that, it's as far as how to
How do you select foods that are better for you?
I honestly, I will look at what the food is composed of,
Okay.
not the ingredients as much as
Mm.
the nutrition,
Okay.
right? So I will look at, so if I have a caloric, let's call it a caloric budget of 2,000 calories, I realize that if I was going to break up those 2,000 calories and I'm going to split it into macronutrients, which is carbs, fats, and protein, the way that I'm going to do that is going to be to optimize my performance, right? I'm not going to do it based off of purely like this tastes good and I want to eat this because I'll get my short-term sugar rush and I'll get my little sugar high. I'm doing it because I know that this is something that's not only going to fuel my goals, but it's going to be able to actually increase my output. Every time that you
Mm.
eat sugar, what happens is you have a huge spike in insulin, which is going to help break down that sugar, right? What happens after that is, especially if it's simple carbs, which is sugar, what happens is you're gonna have that huge insulin response,
Mm.
which causes a massive drop in energy. And that's why so many people are feeling lethargic and exhausted after they start eating all these sugary foods. Like you eat a bowl of cereal, next thing you know, 30 minutes later, what happens? You're hungry again. It's
Mm-hmm.
because you have that huge rush in insulin, which causes that sudden burst to like take out all of those simple carbohydrates, and you have no more energy left because you've already gone through it. It's simple digesting, you know. Your body just wants to blow through it, and your body starts craving more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the sugar companies are doing. They know that your body is going to blow through it faster than something like oatmeal, for example. It's going to take longer to digest. So
Hmm.
you're not going to run through oatmeal the same way that you would run through
A bowl of cereal.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So whenever I'm trying to decide foods that are going to work for me, the two biggest things to look for is caloric density, right? So it's also called nutrient density, right? So if it's very nutrient dense, that essentially means that it's going to be have a lot of nutrients. For example, spinach going to have a lot of nutrients, and it's not going to be very calorically dense. Okay, so if you have a big bowl of spinach, it's going to be about this big, and the calories are going to be probably about 30 calories.
Yeah, not much.
And the thing is, it's very voluminous, while the calories are very low and the nutrition is very high. So you want to opt in for low calorie dense, high nutrient dense foods. All right. On top of that, I like to look for foods that are going to be high in protein, because as somebody who's participated in bodybuilding, I realize that protein is essentially going to be broken down by our body to create amino acids, which are going to be shuttled to create new muscle tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to increase our resting metabolic rate, we want to get stronger, we want to create new muscle fiber, get bigger, feel stronger, and even increase like the amount of calories we're burning just from consuming that food, protein's the food we're going to opt in for. On top of that, as far as carbohydrates go, I'll opt for a more complex carb versus a simple carb. Complex carbs are going to take longer to digest. They're going to have a higher thermic effect of food relative to something simple like a sugar, right? So it's really about just finding the foods that are not going to give you like that sudden hit of like dopamine after you eat it, make you feel like you want to keep eating more and more and more. It's more about like what's going to give me the most bang for my buck and help me become a better version of me.
Yeah. I really love what you're saying. That's prime Ethan right there. That's what I wanted to milk. That's what I wanted, all right? Um, but in all seriousness though, I really do try to sort of have a less is more mentality when I go shopping. I used to eat like shit as a kid. I would eat like I would come home from school and eat a bowl of hot Cheetos as like my like meal for the day. Just it had a lot of calories, but not much nutrition.
And
Uh,
that's calorie dense right there.
yeah, and I had no muscle. I was literally a twig. Like, but it
Which
was
this brings up a point that I try to make all the time about intermittent fasting. People think intermittent fasting is going to be solving all of their problems because they're like, oh, if I only eat, let's talk about OMAD, one meal a day, right? If I eat one meal a day, there's no way I can continue to like gain weight. Thing is, if you eat in that one meal, if you're burning 2,000 calories a day in that one meal, if you eat 3,000 calories a day, you're still adding on weight. Doesn't matter if you fast for 23 hours and you eat one time. If you're eating too much relative to how many calories you're burning, you're going to put on weight. So intermittent fasting can be great for some people because you won't eat as much within that time period. But the thing is, what matters for weight loss is calories in, calories out. If you're putting in more calories than you're putting out, you're going to put on weight. That's how you become overweight. That's how you increase fat tissue. That's how you could increase muscle tissue if you're in a surplus or resistance training. And that's also how you become obese. It's just eating more than you're burning.
yeah.
It's a mix of sedentary lifestyle and bad eating habits.
Yeah. And I've tried to really improve my eating habits when I also go shopping, and people are sometimes say it's harder to eat healthy while saving money. But I contest that and say you just need to buy less foods that aren't nutrient dense and spend the money you do have on foods that are healthy and not as expensive and are nutrient dense. For example, like you can go get a big steak and eat that for like $20, right? A ribeye. It's not that bad. But if you're like, I want to eat healthy and I want to save money, and you can spend literally $10 to $15 on like a meal that can last you for a whole week, for example, as opposed to maybe a steak or like a pasta dish, which may cost that same amount of money and last you that one day. And so when I go to the grocery store, I don't know if you go to Publix, but they have this thing called right rice, and it's like $3 for a bag, and it's low carb, high protein rice that you just put in a pot and it cooks like instantly.
Mm.
And so I'll get something like that. I'll get an onion, black beans, and ground chicken, and maybe just some veggies. Cook all that and mix it all together. And I have the ground chicken, which is protein, low calorie, I think, beans, which are high protein, and the rice, which is high protein, and low carb. And that right there is about like $10 to $15. And with the rice, the chicken, and the beans all put together, that only costs about $15, and that can last me for 3 to 5 days. If I eat right and also have meals that are different than that for breakfast or lunch. And so if you shop smarter, not harder, and if you shop, spending your money on less like things that can maybe bring you instant gratification, like chocolate chip cookies, if you buy that rice instead, that's a good way to, I think, save money while also living healthier. And I also will get things like, I slipped my mind. Completely forgot. Completely
Well, I
forgot.
definitely agree with what you're saying about the smart spending.
Yeah, Magic Spoon cereal. I don't know if you've heard of Magic
Yeah,
Spoon,
I've heard of that.
but it's like no like no low carb, like high fiber, high protein cereal, and it's a little expensive, but if you just get that and then some like milk, that can last you a few days, as opposed to maybe like spending that money on like a bunch of other ingredients, But obviously it's processed, and I like eating eggs. So I'll get some eggs and like vegetables and stuff. But
Yeah, so I'd say the definitely agreeing with what you're saying about smarter spending as far as eating healthy, because people will spend too much money on one healthy meal instead of
exactly.
investing in a opportunity to get multiple meals for that are going to last you. Like, for example, I'll buy it from Costco. I'll grab like 10-pound bag of chicken versus like going out. That's going to cost me like maybe like $25 versus I could go out and eat and order a chicken breast for like $15 for one chicken breast.
Exactly.
Like, you just have to be smarter with where you're spending the money.
You can eat healthy. You can.
You absolutely can. And if your financial situation is something that's holding you back from eating healthy, there's plenty of more affordable options that you probably aren't unaware of. So, for example, I'd say start looking at first look at where you're shopping. So you mentioned Publix. Publix is going to be higher end.
It is expensive.
Something that's going to be more affordable would be either Walmart or Aldi, are both affordable places to shop, and you can get great like protein sources there. Super affordable protein source would be canned tuna. It really doesn't get cheaper than that.
That's very true.
And
very true.
So high protein. One thing I'd say to watch out for is make sure you get it. If you're trying to lose weight, make sure you get it in water rather than oil. If you're trying to add weight, you can afford those extra calories. Go for the oil.
Sometimes we'll get it in olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's really like that's what it comes down to. It depends on your independent goals. So like one person may like need to think about the financial aspect of it, and they may be like, okay, let me get this more affordable option. Let me get canned chicken and canned tuna versus like actual chicken breast, or like going out to eat and getting a chicken breast, versus somebody else who may be more affluent and not really have monetary considerations. They could just order a meal service prep, and then they could save the time for it. That's another thing, is if you're spending too much time investing in like cooking or something, maybe meal prep's something for you, because not only is it going to save you the time, but potentially you could reinvest that time that you're spending cooking and cleaning. You could reinvest that time into going to work or working on a new skill or developing some new knowledge that could further you, rather than spending that time in, like, for example, I spend a lot of time cooking and a lot of time cleaning the kitchen because I'm always eating. Meal prep is a great investment for me personally, because it's going to save me so much time that I could then reinvest to get me more payout later on.
What do you like to meal prep?
So my biggest things that I'll meal prep, honestly, like classic gym bro stuff. I'll do the chicken, the beans, the rice.
Yeah. I
Um,
love my little meal, bro. Like the
mhm,
with the right rice and the ground chicken, it just like all tastes so good and
mhm.
it's so easy.
Yeah, yeah. I'll do overnight oats. Oats are a big one for me.
Hmm.
I like smoothies to go.
I love
Um,
smoothies.
meal prep. I mean, sometimes I'll even do like breakfast foods for the morning. I'll have a
Oh,
bagel.
really?
Yeah, I'll do like I'll make my French toast in advance or anabolic pancakes.
What are anabolic pancakes?
It's secret recipe right here. It's Kodiak mix and egg whites.
Oh,
Yeah.
what do you use egg whites as the liquid base?
Yeah, because they asked for water. Why am I gonna use water when I can make it higher protein?
Yeah. Yeah.
Egg whites are my new water.
Nice, nice, dude. I love that. I want to try that out actually.
Yeah, I would recommend it. And then on top of that, you get free opportunity to add on some fruits. I'll microwave some frozen blueberries, chop up a banana, do my sugar-free syrup. Don't use the real syrup. Don't use any butter.
Why not? Why not real syrup? Even
Because
if it's like
goes back to big sugar. Big sugar's
mm,
got you, man.
what about like the natural syrup that like comes from a tree?
I mean, it's still gonna be high sugar.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
So now I actually have a question then. So like how is it even possible to compare or can you differentiate between, let's say, sugar that comes from a tree like syrup, right, versus a lollipop or like ice cream, which is, milk and like added sugar. Like can you maybe touch on the differences between natural sugar and processed sugar and how they might affect your body similarly or differently?
Yeah, it's just like the refinement processing, like some of them, like for example, like um white sugar is gonna probably be more processed than something like raw cane sugar, for example. And
Like
on top of
granulated
that,
white sugar?
yeah, exactly. That's gonna be like more processed,
Okay.
versus but as soon as you start getting into the realm of ice cream, w- what makes ice cream so addictive and makes it like so like everybody craves that ice cream is not only is it high sugar, which is addictive, it's also combining that with high fat, which when you put the two together, it becomes like this ultra calorie dense thing. And if we were back in the caveman days and we still had to forage for food, right? If we had an opportunity to get something that's going to be high sugar and high fat and very calorie dense,
Hmm.
we're going to want to opt for that every single time, so we would have
So it's more
energy stores.
biological.
It is biological. It's a survival tactic. That's why people overeat, other than the emotional side of things. It's a survival tactic. Our body wants us to hold on to the stored energy, because back in the day, we didn't know when our next food would be.
Yeah,
So
very
we
true.
need that energy stores. So whenever we don't see a deer for the next six weeks, we still have plenty of energy stores on our bellies, in our thighs, on our arms. So we could pull from those energy stores to keep us alive. It's a survival tactic. Our bodies are
Hmm.
made to adapt. So we learned biologically, if we were to overeat, we would have more energy to keep us alive and sustain us for longer.
Hmm. I never thought about it like that.
Mm.
I mean, I have in different ways, whereas, if you're always inside not getting sunlight, your body could be perceiving that as like you're in a cave and you're dying, and we need to stop like giving you the resources to survive and fighting for your life because you're not in a position where you actually are looking like you're surviving or you're living. Therefore, you're not going to feel as motivated to go out. You're going to feel more lethargic. You're going to feel like essentially wasting away because that's what your body biologically thinks is happening to you because for thousands of years you couldn't just be inside your bed all day. You had to actually go out and hunt, go out and forage, go out and do things, which I found really interesting. And that sort of ties into what you were saying with the biological need to eat.
Have you ever looked into the studies for sunlight exposure?
I haven't looked into it, but I mean, what I do know is that it's really good for your body. You get a lot of vitamins and you need
Vitamin
sunlight.
D.
And every time I go out in the sun, I sort of just feel like SpongeBob. I feel like, oh my God, like give it all to me because it's just so naturally replenishing and refreshing.
Yeah,
But
it's
what were you gonna
amazing
say?
that you can actually like get vitamin D just from stepping outside.
Mm-hmm.
And what'll happen is if you miss out on too much sunlight, you can go into depressive states.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It
Mm-hmm.
comes down to that mental health aspect of things, which all I can say to that is go outside and get some sun, y'all. You know, um, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I made a video recently. It was called Touch Grass, but I was in my backyard and I was just talking about how good it can feel to be in nature. And even like looking at the insects around you and the animals around you as like partners in nature. Um, all trying to survive, but also like thriving off of the environment can be really just helpful for your mind. Just like being in a space where your thoughts aren't limited to any ceilings and they can be more limitless because you're open. Like um it just feels better for me at least when I'm outside and I'm a little like less congested in one spot.
Yeah, in the spiritual realm, they call it grounding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do think that grounding is important. Um, Personally, I've fallen out of the practice
Me too.
because
Yeah.
I have non-physical ways to go grounding. Like I meditate,
You do?
and I stretch. So like I feel pretty grounded already. I don't really feel that I need to go out and stick my toes in the grass to feel grounded or feel connected with the earth. Because I realize that I am the earth and the earth is me, and I am the universe and the universe is me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the most common elements in the world are nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. That's the last one. I forget what the last one is, but most common elements in us is nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
We are the universe, and whenever we're really just a soul
We're a part of
inside
it
of
too.
flesh.
Yeah.
As soon as
Yeah, yeah.
we pass away, our bodies are going back to the universe.
Mm-hmm. Back into the earth and then becoming something else.
Yeah, and we'll go right back to the
Yeah.
universe, right where we started.
We're some sort of like
We are the universe.
we're
That's
some
why I
sort of
find it cool.
driver in this vehicle we call the human body. And
Yeah,
it's up to us how we want to like move it around,
definitely.
So you meditate? Because I meditate every day.
I don't meditate every day, but I meditate. Really, for me, what it helps me with is refocusing on where my priorities should be. That's what it helps me with.
How do you meditate? 'Cause it can be different for everyone.
Yeah. So one common thing that I hear about meditation that I disagree with is that you have to sit there and have nothing in your thoughts. You have to sit there and have silence in your head, which like complete mental stillness, which
Mm.
isn't something that I sign up for. It's not something that I believe in. I believe meditation can be whatever it helps you get out of it.
Yeah.
So for me, it helps me. So I have a lot of priorities in my head. So whenever I can sit and be alone with my thoughts, I can create a priority structure.
I do the
So
same thing when
I
I'm
can-
meditating.
yeah, and then I can determine like what task I need to attack next.
Yeah. And I do that too, but sometimes when I do meditate, there's something really enlightening when you have no thoughts. Like it's really, really it's hard to achieve. I think that's what the some of the Buddhists, even people that want to go to heaven, want to achieve is this feeling of like thoughtlessness and egolessness and just sort of existing. Like there's no tasks, there's nothing to do. Your brain is actually able to just like be. Um, and obviously, I have meditating doesn't necessarily need to be sitting down, closing your eyes, but sort of just like awareness. Like not letting your thoughts, and this can happen so often in our society, not letting your thoughts just like take control of you, but rather instead of being the shadow to your mind, the mind is a shadow to your body. And that's sometimes what I try to get from meditating is just like let me take control of my own body and be aware of what I'm doing and have more concrete awareness with how I'm acting throughout the day. Because I feel like people can just be very mechanical,
Go through the motions.
Yeah, like you're not even thinking about what you're doing. You're not even thinking about you're at the gym, you're not even like thinking about how you're moving your body. You're not like putting awareness into that. Like you can be meditating at the gym if you're not thinking about like the video game you want to play when you get home, but like you're actually just feeling the weight of the barbell and you're pushing it and every like piece of your body is completely in that moment.
You just described being present.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just being present, man. Just
Mhm.
being present.
And meditation is something that can help you break that barrier between where you are now, where you may be here right now physically, but mentally you're somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, you're thinking about that video you just watched, or you're thinking about this podcast right now, when you really should be out living life. You should be out in nature. You should be working on that next project, but instead, your mind is not there, you know?
Yeah.
And really, meditation can help break that gap, be the bridge to helping you become more present in this moment right here,
Mm-hmm.
right now. Because
Mm-hmm.
if your body is going through the motions, but your mind's not in it, you're not going to be half as efficient as you should be. And as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you, even maybe before you finish your task, you're probably going to either give up or just like get distracted because you're
Yeah.
not focusing on what you should be.
And that can happen to me at the gym sometimes. And it actually, like we mentioned earlier, even with the eating thing, if you don't like watch yourself, your mind just wants things to do. Like it wants to have, videos to watch or people to think about or games to play or just things that are able to like take it away and let it be somewhere else. Like it requires some effort. And I think people can forget that. It requires effort to be present sometimes. And you have to actually like consciously not necessarily think, but be aware like I just want to be here and I'm going to do what I can to be here.
It takes a lot of effort because we live in an attention based society now.
Mhm.
Everybody wants your attention. So it makes sense that you would have a hard time focusing on one thing. It
Mhm.
makes sense that your attention will be pulled into all these different directions, which goes into like my own little theory that I have, which is that like our technology and our instant gratification based society is kind of playing into the increased rates of ADHD.
Oh
You know,
man, we got to talk about that.
absolutely, I'd love to because
Just go
the
on.
thing is that every time that we have like for example TikTok, it's so instant gratification. It's one thing after the
It's a
next.
gamble.
And essentially what's going to happen is your attention span is going to get shorter. You're going to become less satisfied after completing these tasks. And essentially it just makes sense that if you're constantly in go mode and you're always having all this stimulation and all these things that are fighting to get your attention, how could you focus on one thing? How could you be expected to sit for 8 hours and focus on this class? Maybe we're not wired to do that, especially when we're given all these opportunities that are trying to take our attention away. How do they expect us to sit in class for 8 hours and give them our full attention when our entire society is designed to take our attention away?
And I really think you mentioned like the primitive sort of brain earlier when it comes to ice cream. I think like humans up until honestly like the 1900s, at least in modern society, like life was just so much suffering. Like you weren't eating good food all the time. You like humans are very antagonistic towards each other. You weren't drinking a lot of water all the time. Life was very difficult. And now we have access to things that can make life easier. And so when your brain is seeing something like this is pleasure, your body is like, I just want pleasure because I don't want to suffer when I used to suffer, when our ancestors would suffer, when they couldn't eat every day, when they couldn't, do the things that we do every day. It's like pleasure's available, I need to take it. Like survival is food, I need to eat food to survive. And I think our primitive mind can sort of grab onto that and be like, pleasure, 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 because this is what I think I need to survive. But like you mentioned earlier, it requires effort to overcome that primitive brain
Mm-hmm.
because we're not living in exactly primitive times, at least in a modern society.
Yeah, I think that the reason that it is shifted towards pleasure is because all of our basic necessities are now given to us. We no longer have to go out and we're not starving thinking about killing the next cow I see because I'm so hungry that I could like eat anything that I see.
Hmm.
We're complacent. We are well fed, we are well rested, and we have shelter, right? All of our basic needs are taken care of.
Yeah.
Now, your body is no longer in a state where you have to act to survive. So now it's up to you whether you want to be a high achiever or whether you want to give in to the impulses that are going to drag that attention away.
Mm-hmm.
That could be making you better than you are today. Or you could be drawn into what society wants you to be drawn into, which is come watch this movie, come eat this popcorn, come eat this birthday cake. You know, it's like all these things that are going to pull you in opposite ways that aren't going to be driving you forward. And it's all just societal norms. We were talking about big sugar earlier. Let's talk about how every single time that we have a big holiday, it somehow just happens to be tied into big sugar. If we look at, let's start with the birthday. What do you do on your birthday? Tell me what you eat on your birthday.
A fat piece of cake.
Precisely. What about Christmas? What do you have on Christmas?
Fat piece of dessert.
Maybe some hot cocoa.
Yeah.
You know, probably some candy up in the stocking.
Candy cane. Yeah.
Candy cane. What about Halloween? What do we give out on Halloween? You think we give out apples and oranges?
No.
We give out candy. Every single holiday. Ooh, St. Patrick's Day. What do we do?
Drink.
Exactly. It's not big sugar, but it goes back to alcohol. It goes back to these vices. And if all of our basic necessities are taken care of, then like it would make sense that we would want that next thing that's going to give us like a sense of gratification, because the higher level sense of gratification takes work. It takes time to be dissatisfied to get larger satisfaction. But the thing is, like, it's like they used to do a study where it would be like they had a kid who would essentially have the option to eat a piece of candy now or like 3 pieces of candy in like 5 minutes. Most of them would take the piece of candy now. That's exactly the same situation. We would give out our ability for financial freedom to be able to scroll on TikTok right now.
And even when you were just talking about like waiting for 5 minutes versus eating like candy now, the brain, I think we can underestimate how powerful it can be, because like
absolutely
it can sort of just take over and be like self control is not as promoted, and it can just be like, eat this because I need to eat it. And it requires a lot of discipline when you need to resist things like that. I wanted to talk about transitioning the conversation a little bit to like childhood eating habits. We were talking about this before the show. How does the food you eat as a kid affect the way your digestive systems work in the future? And if you eat unhealthy as a kid, I mean, I feel like I've really transitioned my diet, because when I was a kid, I would eat hot Cheetos every day, and it was like my stomach was like a gut that was ready to eat it, and it was like expecting it almost. When I got to college, I started eating a lot of vegetables, lots of greens, and lots of like chicken. And after a while, it sort of became like my body was expecting that. Like I can't go more than a few days without a smoothie now, because my body is just like, where's that smoothie? So talk about maybe eating habits you can have when you're a kid.
So I'm happy to hear that you've made that positive switch now, and you're
It,
starting
it,
to
it
feel
requires
better.
effort. It requires so much effort, but yeah, you feel great. You feel great.
The reason that it takes effort is because, like you said, you feel like your body's like grown and ready for that next meal. It's not only like your body, it's also your mind. Your mind is ready for that next thing. It's the same as if you were to show cocaine to a cocaine addict. They're immediately going to get like a big hit of dopamine. If you show food to an obese person, they have the same neurological response where their brain starts firing, and they get like this sense of anticipation, like they're about to eat. It's the same sort of thing. It's cognitive. And as far as whenever you're a child and your eating habits, so the biggest thing for that is really that if you have bad eating habits as a child, it's going to affect your body composition, which is then going to affect your metabolic rate as you get older, right? So if going away from like the downsides of like malnutrition, which could be very severe, if we're talking about like as far as like physique style content goes, it would be more so like if you don't have enough protein as a kid, and you're essentially going to have lower lean mass on your body, which is then going to result in a slower metabolic rate. So if you were to have like high protein as a child, you would essentially have more lean mass on your frame, which would then in turn result in a higher metabolic rate, and you're just essentially your body has to sustain that muscle.
I feel like I've had to lose that like fat I gained when I was a kid because it was just like everywhere in my body. I
Yeah,
had to like
baby fat.
completely reverse it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the good thing is whenever you're still young, it's you have like higher energy levels. And did you start your transition when you were like around like
I'm not
a
transgender. I'm not
teenager?
transgender. No, I mean I started eating healthier I think when I got honestly when I moved in when I moved to Orlando to go to college, I started going to the gym frequently in my senior year of high school. In my junior year, I didn't really know what I was doing. I would like go and hit triceps and then hit biceps in the same day and then hit legs in that same day. It was just like a bunch of random stuff. But my friends were like, "You got to eat white chicken. Go eat chicken
Mm,
breast, chicken breast, chicken breast." And now I just eat so much chicken breast.
mm.
And and then eventually I started getting more into vegetables and salads and technically around like 18, 19. So I was a teenager when I started doing that like gut transition.
Working it like when you were making that transition, it was when you had higher testosterone levels. So you're essentially gonna be able to see those changes like a little bit faster than if you had started when you were a bit younger,
Hmm.
or if you had started like after like 25 and your testosterone starting to drop.
Yeah.
But honestly, whenever you're talking about changing eating habits, it doesn't really matter as much about like your age so much as like what you're doing, what you're putting in,
Mm.
and the energy that you're putting out. So if you increase your energy out, you're essentially going to have positive adaptations, right? So training is a stress on the body. It's going to create two things. It's going to create fitness and it's going to create fatigue. The beautiful thing about that is the fatigue goes away faster than the fitness does. So your body's going to be adapting. So essentially, if you are consistently training and not overtraining to the point where you're going down, if you're consistently training, you're going to be first, you're going to be fatigued. That's why you have a couple of rest days, maybe some cardio, gets you back up. So now you're actually super compensating. You're actually higher than your baseline because now you still have that fitness, but the fatigue is gone. So now you do it again. You train, you have increased fatigue and increased fitness. Once you recover, the fatigue is gone. You're once again a little bit higher.
Mm.
And that's really how like those positive adaptations start to occur. Um, as far as like when you're a child and you're starting to train, it's really just a matter of choosing the exercises that are going to be best for a child. You really want to make sure that it's something that's going to be entertaining for them because children get bored easily. Let's be honest, kids don't want to like sit around and curl some dumbbells. They want to run around. They want to
Hmm.
like let that energy go because they are very high energy. And it's good they should be, you know? Like it's a lot better to let them run around and let that energy out versus increasing their habits of sedentary lifestyle, you know, giving
Yeah.
them the opportunity to sit inside all day.
Hmm. So I wanted to talk about another topic that I think you'd have an interesting take on. Um, are we normalizing or celebrating obesity too much? Like because I understand people due to conditions and constraints that might not have been available to them or conditions that they have suffered under. Maybe their family was poor and they had to eat unhealthy foods. Maybe they're obese now, and you want them to feel like don't hate yourself for feeling obese. You had to suffer from these conditions, now you're obese. But there's been a debate around like should we even be telling people like it's okay to be obese, or should we be like no, don't be obese? Like we shouldn't be saying it's okay. Like let's model people that are obese, but go and lose that weight and be healthier.
Here's the thing about obesity. It is not healthy to be obese. Does that mean you should hate yourself? No. You should, firstly, find acceptance with where you are, and you need to be honest with yourself. Say, I am starting here. I am 200 pounds overweight. That's a fact, right? Once you analyze where you are, you need to come to acceptance. You need to accept where you are. You need to be able to love yourself as you are, right? It's not about hating your body and wanting to change yourself so that society accepts you. Fuck all that. it should be about, I want to feel better, right? It's not about, oh, I'm a victim of my circumstances in the past. It should be about, I'm an adult now. I am able to make the choices that are either going to lead me further into this rabbit hole, or I can make the decisions that are going to work to make me feel better,
Mm-hmm.
make me be able to walk upstairs. I have clients who like can't do a step up, because their obesity issues are pretty severe. So it's about health. It's not about getting accepted into this social clique of like, oh, you look so good, you lost weight. It's really about being able to handle the functions of life and
Mm-hmm.
not die from a heart attack. You know that cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in America?
No.
It is.
Wow.
It beats cancer and it beats upper respiratory disease.
Wow.
So it's a very serious issue, and it's not something that we want to break people down for, because in part it is them just being a victim of their environment initially, but then there comes to a point where you have to take accountability for it. I do think that we are making it too easily to be proud of being fat and be proud of being obese, when that's not something that we should be uplifting, because it's not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to ask you, and I think you just answered that really well. And you touched on that really well. What's it what's it like working with clients? Like obese or not, like why do you enjoy working with people that want to get healthier?
I like working with them because as a child, I had self confidence issues. I was overweight. The doctor would always tell me
Really?
I was. Yeah, the doctor had told me I was almost obese, actually. And as a child, right?
Oh
So
shit.
I had a lot of body image issues. And once I managed to work through that and start to feel better about myself, I knew immediately this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to share this feeling of success with others. And that increased self confidence, something you can't put a price tag on.
And it feels valuable when you're able to see, your clients improving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when my client starts texting me, like, I'm starting to feel more confident about myself, I can take my shirt off in public and not feel embarrassed. Like, that's something that deeply resonates with me, because that speaks to my inner fat child. you know that makes me feel like I've shared what was the most um like mentally challenging thing that I've overcome, and I've been able to like share that victory with somebody else.
Hmm. And so what made you want to start like sharing some of this stuff on YouTube?
Honestly, I was just looking at the rates of people that were dying from cardiovascular disease, and I realized that it was
Mm.
so serious that I realized that it would be selfish of me to have all of this knowledge that could help all of America and only give it to people that would be paying, right? I feel like everybody should have the access to quality knowledge, the ability to lose that weight. And if it comes down to the point where you know what to do because you've watched my videos, you've studied up on it, but you just don't have the discipline, the self accountability to keep yourself on top of your program, that's when I come in. I will be your accountability coach. I can help you from anywhere across the United States. I will be able to send you a customized program, and I will keep you accountable to make sure that you're losing that weight. That's really why I started. I wanted the free access to be there if you couldn't afford it. Because
Yeah.
weight loss and health should not be something that you have to pay for.
And now that you mentioned that, I feel like it's a good mentality to say like, because I feel like I've learned so much from reading and just like experiencing uncomfortable things that I'm like getting these ideas that I want to share to people, and I feel like it's a nice way to think of being like this is selfish to not share, and you should just share it because if it helped you so much, who knows how much it could help somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you never know what somebody else is going through.
you never
It
do.
could be exactly what they needed to change
Mhm.
their life.
Mhm.
And I heard a quote recently. It was saying that if you neglect who you could be, you're doing a disservice to all of society, because you have a specific skill set that only you can bring to the table. And nobody else is going to be able to look at it from the perspective you do. And if you neglect your self development, you're neglecting the entire world and the positive change that you can bring to it. And that's why I've been so on top of trying to create Ethan B coaching so I can help all of these people and really like share the ability to succeed with others.
Ethan, tell everybody where they can find your videos and all your content. And
So you can follow me on YouTube at Natty King Ethan, one word, NattyKingEthan. Same on my Instagram, same on my TikTok. And yeah, if you want free training content, free nutrition advice, or if you're looking for an accountability coach to make sure that you see the successes you want, that's where you reach me. All right.
Ethan, thank you so much for being
It's been
here.
an absolute pleasure.
Very big pleasure. Let's take one last sip of the water for the road.
Yes, you'll give me a good clank.
Everyone, please check out Ethan's channel. He has really high quality content. And it's amazing seeing how much he's grown on YouTube and how awesome you've managed to improve your body over the past few years since I've known you. You become a fucking soldier. The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is jealous, and I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
One last closing comment. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you are on steroids. You've been outed by the Natty King.
You've been out about. What are you gonna say to that, Dwayne?
I don't think he's gonna see it.
Thank you guys so much, and take care.
It's been real, y'all.
Appreciate you all.